Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. I believe we are show 142, which is really getting up there. I can't believe we've made it this far.
I know. Every week I look at the number and I'm just astounded.
So, anyone who's used to being here, welcome back. Anyone who's new, welcome. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about snow, and pretty well everything snow related. I don't know about where you're from or where you're to, but this morning when I woke up, we had one of our first fresh snowfalls of the year, and it always brings a lot of thoughts to my mind. I love snow, and I hate snow at the same time. It's a love-hate relationship for sure, and I'm sure that's the fact for a lot of you people. But I thought it'd be a really good topic to talk about because it's sort of a bit different than what we normally talk about, which would be equipment or different camping styles and things like that. But this is like the environment, and one of the factors of the environment that really has a huge impact on what you do. And I know a ton of people will look at it and say, "Oh, it snowed. I'm not going camping, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that." But it really kind of is an advantage for a lot of things. Once it's really you get snow, Robert just said something seconds before he started. It opens up trails, like it opens up access areas that you wouldn't normally maybe reach, and then there's the beauty. So there's a wide expanse where we're going to start, but I just want to start with this morning driving in down the highway, looking at the trees with the fresh snow on the branches. It is possibly one of the prettiest sights you see all year. Nice fresh falling snow is, in my opinion, some of the prettiest, especially in the morning or just in the evening when the sun's just like in the twilight. It brings visions of things like Christmas and happiness, and just generally for me it's a positive, happy feeling because it's just so pretty and so calming and relaxing. And even the woods, when there's the trees, like it seems quieter. Would you not agree, Robert?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think scientifically, we talked about this before. Maybe it was on the show. I don't remember. Maybe it was around the campfire. It does make things quieter. It's a sound dampening thing, which makes everything so much more peaceful. You get to hear less of the creaking and groaning of trees and snapping of twigs and leaves rustling and stuff like that. And you can really get into the serenity of what's around you. You get to hear a little bit more of those animals that are maybe chirping or squeaking or something like that off in the distance, or you really get to appreciate a brook or different things like that.
Yeah, and at night when it is dark and you got the stars and the moon with a nice fresh coat of white snow over everything, it's brighter. It's kind of luminous. So it really changes the effect. Because in winter, when we have the ton of snow, it's generally really dark. But then this white blanket kind of makes it brighter, more inviting in some ways. So, that's just the aesthetics of it. And I want to get into a bit more than just the aesthetics, but from just the aesthetics, it definitely adds to me an appeal to getting out there. So, I think we all know what snow is. I'm not going to break down, say snow is frozen precipitation and gathers up. I mean, that's going, but what does it mean for somebody who's bushcrafting? And it means quite a lot. It means generally you have maybe a cleaner source of water if you know how to deal with it. Of course, the downside of melting snow is you do need to melt a hell of a lot of snow to get not as much water as you might like. But if you take it from a clean spot, it's usually pretty clean. Probably, I would say, significantly safer than pulling it from a stream.
No, and I agree with that. And there is instances where it's not, but I mean, some are specific to regions and areas. But like you said, something that was key. If you're going to be taking snow in for drinking water, just make sure it's clean and fresh is better.
Yeah. So side of the street, not so great of a place to grab it. Middle of the woods, a nice clearing, and it's all freshly laid snow, and you haven't seen any tracks or anything around it. It's usually somewhat safe to pick, to gather that up. And in the winter, like a lot of these streams are going to be buried, like some small streams and stuff you can't find. Larger rivers are not necessarily safe, so it may be the safest access to why you're going to get to. It means you don't necessarily have to be camping near or on a water source, which we tend to try to do in summer months. It opens up areas you might not necessarily normally explore. And the other thing, and one of my favorite ways to travel in the winter.
Oh, I think I know what you're going for here.
I love the color too. This one's big. This is my daughter's. But snowshoes. Snowshoes, snow can make it harder to go through the woods for sure. You get 6 to 7 inches of snow. It's not too bad. When you get 2-3 feet of snow, you're sinking past your knees, and it can inhibit your ability to get around. But on the flip side, with a set of snowshoes, like a good pair of snowshoes, you'll go where you might not have been able to get in the summer. You can, travel over the top of that, and it allows you to travel over much rougher terrain because the terrain is buried under a sheet of snow. It's usually a lot flatter and easier to travel. There's a limit. The other thing is it's easier to pull, say, a sled across snow than it would be to carry a large pack or drag something in the summer. So now all of a sudden you can carry more gear.
Which is advantageous for hot tenting, because a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll get into it later in the show, say, I'm not going camping in the winter, it's too cold. Well, a little bit of snow and a sled, which you got yourself one there not long ago, Ben, before you got scouted, right around the same time. Like you said, you can throw the hot tent in there along with your stove and pull it along with extra gear, and it's less strain on your body than trying to hike in with a 50-pound pack.
Yeah, and hot tent's definitely a good option, but, I mean, a decent hot tent stove, you're looking at minimum $200-$300, really. And it goes up from there. But you get yourself a decent sleeping bag and a decent tent, and you can still camp like pretty well year round. A nice warm sleeping bag, you don't need the stove. And the thing is, snow itself is an insulator. So you can pile snow up over your shelter, you can pile snow up against your shelter to block a lot of the wind, and you get inside of a snow fort. If you can build your shelter out of snow, or even a natural shelter, a nice lean-to with 6-7 inches of snow on top of it, it gets quite warm, like surprisingly warm. Like snow in itself, although it's cold as it is a great, awesome insulator. So you don't need necessarily a big stove. A small fire pit, a good windbreak behind it, and a nice shelter in front, and you can heat up a pretty good area. More than comfortable enough to sleep with a winter sleeping bag. And it's a great time. Like I said, it's quieter at night in the winter. It feels quieter, partly because the snow does absorb a lot of the sound. The same insulating factors for heat helps you with the sound. And the skies, you get very clear, crisp night skies. And a long night, it's beautiful nights. And there's nothing that beats a nice fire and a good meal and a good sleep in the woods, and you can definitely do it in winter. And snow really adds to that, I find.
And I agree with you. Something that I always think about when I think snow is it's clean. And I don't just mean, it's clean, there's no dirt and stuff in it, but kind of like that too. It's like you take the roughest section of woods, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started up. Take a rough section of woods, you're like, that's just not pretty. Throw some fresh snow into it. It may be absolutely gorgeous. Like when I dabbled in photography a little bit, I used to look forward to the first couple snows, especially the stickier snow when it sticks to the trees and stuff, and this is what we were talking about. Man, it makes for some wicked photos. And if anybody knows my Facebook, you can go back through, and I took some in a park, and they almost look painting-like. If you get if you're into photography and you do that, I've long since dropped it. I learned that's not my cup of I'm no good at it. But if you are good at it, it's a great medium to photograph. And yeah, at night, there's something about the crisp coolness and the clarity of the sky. And like you said, you can wake up in the middle of the night. You may not even need a flashlight if you got a good moon out. You can wander around, fairly close to camp. Don't get yourself lost. And if you need to go pee or something like that, it's not bad. It's a whole different type of camping. Granted, you do need a little bit of gear, like Ben said there. You do have to have a decent sleeping bag and things like that. But other than that, it's really not that much different than camping in the summer. You just prepare
No.
yourself for it.
I mean, I've hammocked in extremely cold temperatures. I've hammocked in colder temperatures than I've hot tented. Um, and I can honestly say that. Like we were out one of the coldest nights of the year one year down in the valley with a bunch of people, and me and my daughter. We both. I mean, we took way too many sleeping bags. We were there. No way I was getting cold, and I took a couple of body warmers, like the hand warmers, just the large size, and tossed into our sleeping bags to keep the chill and stuff out. I mean, we slept super comfortable, each of us in our own hammocks, and you know, it was really fun because you get out there in the snow in the winter. It's really, it's really a different camping experience. And yes, it can get cold. You do have to dress for it. Uh, but I can say honestly, I have felt colder in the spring and even on a really cool summer night because I wasn't really dressed or prepared
Mm.
for it. When you go winter camping in the winter, you dressed for it. You have warm boots, you have insulated coveralls or snow suits or whatever. You wear your thermals, and more often than not, my biggest problem in the cold weather is cooling down. And I think if you really think about it, most of us actually have that problem. Yes, there's periods of time where we're cold, don't get me wrong. But if you're doing anything, it doesn't take long that you find that you've overdressed. You've had too much gear on, and you have to shed, or you have to open up your jacket, or you have to take your hat off or your gloves off just to regulate your temperature. It's it's not that hard to dress for the cool, especially here in like Nova Scotia, a lot of like Newfoundland, the Atlantic provinces. Further up north, it may be a different story. I've never really tried camping in, say, northern Alberta or the Northwest Territories. That might be a different story. But I suspect that even then, with the right gear, it's very doable. In fact, I know some people do it, so I know it's doable.
I have done it in Alberta, um, and honestly, it wasn't that much different from here. I mean, I
Hmm.
think it was the time of year, it was earlier winter, so stuff like that. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be that much different, regardless of where you go, as long as you're prepared for it. We got a couple things from the comments, if you don't mind, there, Ben, just before we lose
Oh,
track of them. So we have Scott and Steve with us. Scott says, "Have you guys ever tried those fat skis made for trekking?" Um, I've tried them. What about yourself, Ben?
no, not fat skis. I've done cross country skiing, and the skis I had for that were definitely like 40 years old from today. So again, a very old style. I really enjoy it. I've really thought multiple times about buying skis, but here in Nova Scotia, honestly, I've rarely had enough snow to use my snowshoes, so I'm not spending anything on another piece of gear. We do get the snow, but it's just
It's never deep
generally
anymore, or it's only
no.
deep for a week. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But so my experience with them is, at least the ones I had, once you creep up higher in the weight, they're not so great. I prefer a pair of snowshoes. Like you can make those suckers as fat as you want, but until they're snowshoe size, they're not going to keep me above the snow. And I'm talking like I'm 300 pounds.
yeah.
I've never hidden that fact. I openly admit it. They don't work for me. Never have. They just sink down too low and they become too laborious. Now, that being said, I know lots of people that use them. They enjoy them quite well. But for me, snowshoes is the way to go. I get a wider footprint snowshoe, much like what Ben had up there for his daughters, just in a larger size. And don't get me wrong, it's more difficult to walk in snowshoes than walking, but it is exponentially less difficult to walk in snowshoes than it is to walk in waist deep snow.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's probably a proper snow for each. To be truly honest with you,
And that's
um,
fair.
if you have a slightly packed, harder snow, skis are probably much preferable than snowshoes. Snowshoes won't offer you that much in it, but skis will actually give you like an advantage over walking. Where lighter, less packy snow, your snowshoes are going to allow you to kind of walk over top of it. And in true powder snow, I mean, I don't think at my size or your size, the really powdery snow, they offer much advantage either way. Uh, you just go through it. It's just the end result, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, each type really can be quite enjoyable, and I really do enjoy snow, and I find it really funny, not annoying at all, but just funny when people look at me and say, "Oh, there's snow, and I'm not doing that." Like some of my best outdoor experiences have involved snow, snowshoeing. It was a really popular thing. We call them boil ups. I don't know if you guys do it here, uh, but we would take just a tin can, honest to God, like an apple can with a piece of wire on it and a handful of things inside, like some coffees, some hot chocolates, um, and maybe a couple of snacks. And we would just walk into the woods, hang that pot over a little fire, and we had a boil up. Like we boiled up some tea and stuff, and just sat in the woods, like around his fire. It was a whole experience. It was one of the funnest things to do.
We do similar things. We just never, or at least I have. I've never given a name to it, but I love the name, and I will remember that.
Yeah, it was super popular growing up. Like everyone seemed to do it. Snowmobilers loved it. If you were a snowmobiler, you kept one in the back. A kit in the back of your snowmobile. You go out for the day, and when you got hungry or time for a snack, you pulled it out. It could be a couple of chocolate bars and a tea or a coffee. And I mean, it's probably one of the best feelings in the world, having a nice hot drink in the winter, like in the woods, miles from anyone, just listening to the quiet and the odd animal and maybe a small stream off in the distance, half the time hidden under the snow. You can't even see it. So, I mean,
Something that I used to do, and I've since gotten away from it just as I've gotten older, but, well, not older, I guess. It was only a couple of years ago I used to do it. Slight deviation from our channel. Not too bad, though, but what we used to do, if anybody's familiar with the area out here, there used to be a rifle range that you could access in the winter, but you had to snowshoe into it, right? So that used to be one of the things that we enjoyed. Well, they never plowed the road. That's all there was to it. It was like, you could go in, you just got to find your own way in, but you can't really take a snowmobile in because they didn't want those in there. They didn't want four-wheelers in there, so it was a vehicle where you walked in. And so most times we snowshoed in, and we used to do a little bit of sport shooting, me and a buddy of mine, so we go out, practice with our sidearms and stuff, and that's what we do. We go out, we do a little shooting, practice some competition, some holster work and stuff like that, but we also take our cook set. And, you just do what you're doing for the day, and then you would crack out, make a fire, and quite honestly do exactly what you were talking about there. We bring the twig stoves, you know what I mean? I imagine they would frown upon building a fire pit actually down there. But we bring the twig stoves and we'd boil up a cup of coffee and maybe make a can of soup or something like that. We made a day of it. We're only talking maybe 1.5 kilometers in the woods. So we're not gone from society, but it was an enjoyable activity. And I honestly liked it better than just driving in the summer.
Oh yeah, no, I fully understand that. It definitely adds to the experience. I've never felt like the snow took away from the experience in any way. I feel that's always added something. And I know a lot of people. I know some people who are bushcrafters, who are campers, who actually would consider winter their absolute favorite time to camp. And yes, they camp in the summer for the most part, but they look forward more to a nice winter camp. And I think part of it is because fewer people do it. It does seem to be a little bit more challenging. But the satisfaction you can get from it, the enjoyment you get from that fire. We're in the summer, like you have a fire, but it's almost unrequired. But in the winter, it's like, you look forward to it. Like that fire is important. And it gives you that light. It gets dark early. You can really enjoy it for a while. And while I'm talking about this, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Having a fire in the winter, it definitely has its own challenges. And one of the ones, and I'm sure anyone who's not super experienced with camping in the winter probably can picture it right away. You light a fire on top of snow, and it sinks down to the bottom of the snow.
You're not going to have fire for very long.
Right? So you need to deal with that. And the method I like, the method I think most people do, is you cut 4 or 5 logs, probably say 2 to 3 feet long, and you crisscross them. It's probably 4 or 5 one way and 4 or 5 the other, so you have a nice base. in the snow and you light your fire on top of that. And you do that, it takes quite a while to burn down through those logs, and then your fire doesn't drop down to the bottom of the snow. Because otherwise, if you can keep the fire going, it's literally going to drop to wherever the ground level is.
Yeah.
But if you can float your fire on top of that, it helps, and it's not hard. It doesn't usually take that much. It's pretty easy to find a handful of good solid wood to lay down for that. There's a lot usually in the woods. There's tons of standing dead or half falling dead that hasn't quite hit the ground, and a couple of quick cuts with your saw or axe, and you're good to go.
So a couple more from the comments, just while we're rolling along here. Scott, that's how he camps. Lean-to fire out front, military sleep system works great. Steve, hey everyone. For me, really just a chance to break out some different gear, gator, snowshoe, sleds. It's really not more difficult, just a very different experience requiring different planning, which we had mentioned. And the last one from Scott is, I feel like my winter camping is almost more luxurious because of the gear I can pile on the sled. And we talked about that too. And that is like, there's a testament, you know what I mean? If you got a decent sled, and I do say a decent sled, don't go to Canadian Tire or Walmart or something like that and buy the $14 kid sled. Better than nothing. I will give you that. But the first time it snags on something, you're going to bust it all to hell. Go get like a Pelican sled or something like that, you know, heavy duty. The one that you have there, Ben, where I see them a lot is duck hunting. Believe it or not, people use these sleds for duck hunting to carry their decoys out in the water because they're like sealed and they'll float and you can put some gear and stuff in them and things like that. That's where I originally seen them. I never thought about winter camping because, you know, why would I? That makes sense. But yeah, you get a good sled, something with a little bit of rigidity to it. You can pack a ton of gear on there and pull it a long way with very minimal effort. So you can take nicer sleeping bags or heavier sleeping bags, if you will, to make your night a little bit more pleasant. A little extra clothing. You can take a little more food, which we're all a fan of. You can just take more to make things a little better and to compensate for that extra snow.
Yeah, so I mean, I bought mine at Costco, and quite a few of my buddies who do it too have gotten theirs at Costco. You haven't told me if you want one from Costco yet.
I do, and Chris offered to buy me one not long ago, but I had to drop $1,000 on the truck, and it just sickened me, and I didn't have the money at the time.
So, I mean, Costco had them a little while ago. Also, Princess Auto here locally, they had 2 or 3 types that were fairly similar. I do love the one from Costco. It comes with a cover and a few other little niceties, nice thick runners. But I have seen plenty of options out there that would work perfectly fine. And it doesn't take much. And then a couple of like good Rubbermaid style containers to keep your gear clean and dry inside of that. You know, it's easy to take an axe, a saw, maybe some fishing gear. Ice fishing is a great entertainment. I mean, it's
the myth of ice fishing when it comes to you, Ben. You still don't believe it happens.
It's voodoo stuff. Like you really can't pull fish from the water in the winter, but some people, you know, have magic or something. I don't know.
Gary, I swear, people will buy them in the store, attached to the line when nobody's looking, slip them in the water, and then a few minutes later, be like, oh, look what I got.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen me. I can pull fish out of anything, any time of the year until it comes winter, and then it's just like, yeah, no, there's no fish there anymore. So it's not my thing, you know. It's a bit of a joke. I've never successfully, I don't think, pulled one out in the winter. I've tried many a time. I enjoy it. It's fun. But it's a myth, for sure. No doubt about it. Can't convince me otherwise until I catch one. And Gary's taken me out, and I've gone out with other people, like accomplished fishermen. They swear it's a real thing. But
I've done smelts. I used to love fishing smelts in the wintertime. But I've never pulled anything other than a smelt out of ice, to be perfectly honest.
It is fun, and I've seen people do it. I know it's not a myth. I'm joking, of course. Anyone who thinks I'm serious. Sorry, I didn't realize you were that gullible. I mean, but no, I mean it is a fun thing, and you get it. And luxurious is probably pretty true because you have the sled, because you have that ability to take some more stuff. You tend to, and because there's more downtime. Because honestly, winter camping does have more downtime. Mm-hmm. It isn't quite as maybe stressful. In the middle of summer, you have probably 16 hours of sunlight.
Yeah, and that's probably on the low side if you're getting to like the dead center, like the equinox,
Yeah.
or not the equinox, the solstice, I guess. Yeah, you might even get more usable time than 16 hours. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's a lot.
It seems like 5 o'clock there's sun, and then 10 o'clock there's still sun, right, in the summer. And now this time of year, you wake up and 8 o'clock there's sun, and 5 o'clock there's sun, and that's
Maybe. I was about to say 5 o'clock today, sun was gone, man.
Right. So I mean, it's right now you have the shortest days of the year. Well, coming up, we're 1 month from the shortest day of the year, a little less than a month from it. So when you're out there, if you leave early in the morning, you only have eight hours or so of good sunlight, and then you're looking at dark. So you kind of want to get to your site a little earlier. You're not going to travel the same distances you might have in the summer, and you do have the snow and the weather conditions slowing you down a little bit. So you might not travel as far, but then when you get to your place, you're going to want to gather firewood. You're going to have, and you want more firewood because you're going to try and keep the fire going most of the night or most of the evening. You got probably a good 5-6 hours you're planning to staying awake anyways. So there's a lot of work to it. There is a fair bit of work. I've done multiple day trips in the winter, and generally during the day, a good portion of your day is just collecting more firewood, just preparing.
Yeah. And that does become more important through the winters. You definitely have to keep that fire going, specifically because the big challenge that you're going to get with winter, and we've kind of alluded to it, is trying to keep dry. And that's really the only challenge. And I mean, I say the only challenge, but I mean, it's a big challenge. But if you plan for it, that's really the only thing you have to contest with that's really hard. Is trying to keep a little bit of a barrier between any of your stuff and yourself and, the snow or water and things like that. And if you do get a little bit of water, then that's what the fire backup is for. So the fire does become more of a centralized necessity, as Ben had said earlier. But I mean, that's it. For anybody that's really out there thinking, I don't want to go camping in the winter, that's really your only challenge. Plan a little bit more for it. Realize you're going to cut a little more firewood. And get out there and enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. And if you have the right clothes, like a good snow clothes, you're not going to get too wet. It'll keep you really dry. The other great thing that I wanted to talk about was one of these things that, what does snow do for you? I mean, it kind of brightens up the air, but it also makes tracking really easy if you know what you're doing. It is so much easier to track animals and things in the winter. So if you're interested in tracking, improving your skill, if you're interested in the snares, like if you want to catch rabbits or even hunting for small game and stuff, the winter gives you a huge advantage, really, if you learn how to use it. And it's always a great excuse. As kids, we spent a lot of time, snaring rabbits and stuff. It's a great pastime in my opinion, and good, just an excuse to get out for us. We didn't care if we ever caught anything. Half the time, I don't think we even set snares.
We find this.
What?
Said I've been there.
Yeah, me and you, world's worst hunters.
But always enjoy the trip.
Yeah, right. I always said, someone asked me one time, if you couldn't hunt, would you still go? I said, yeah, I'd take a camera. I'd still hunt. I'd still look for the animal. I'd still, I don't.
And I actually know a lot of people, that's how they hunt. They just say, I could have taken the shot, which is perfectly legitimate. I don't condone killing anything for just the sake of killing it. Don't get me wrong. Anytime we mention hunting, we utilize everything that's utilizable, honestly, right down to I have saved a couple patches of fur off the deer that I harvested this year for someone they want for fly tying. You know what I mean? So we utilize a lot. Don't anybody ever think we don't. But if that's not your thing, that's perfectly fine too. Don't misunderstand. If you want to go out hunting with a camera, by all means, get out there, enjoy it. You'll learn a ton.
Yeah. One of the coolest things I've ever seen, I don't know how many people have seen, I assume quite a few people, but I have seen the remnants or the track of an owl taking an animal off the ground.
Yeah, you get to see the plunge hole and then kind of the wings fluttered out.
Yeah.
First time I ever seen one, freaked the hell out of me, honestly. It's like, what is that? That doesn't make any sense until I actually, thought about it for a minute. That made perfect sense. But the initial, that ain't right. Well, there's a hole there, and then there looks like something fluttered down around it.
That rabbit grew wings and flew away.
I want to find that there rabbit. I got questions.
But no, I mean, it's it's the reality. I mean, life is brutal, and things happen, things die, things, but it's beautiful too in its own way. And in the winter, there's a trace that you could see. I mean, it exists in the summer too. If you know what to look for, you can see the same thing, but it's never as clear, in my opinion, as in the winter in the snow. And it's pretty cool to see some of the stuff. And like we said, I mean, it improves your tracking. It's nice and bright. It's a source of water. Just the aesthetics alone, the ability to travel. I mean, it offers so much. And then it can be shelter in itself. Like, is there anyone who's grown up around snow who's not made a snow fort? Right?
It'd be hard to say yes to that. I mean, it's just a staple. Most kids, the majority of kids and teenagers and some adults, you get enough snow and you're bored with a shovel, you're gonna build a snow fort.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorite things I've ever done. I still think I'd do it, given half a chance, half an excuse to do it. And I've tried it with everything, like light amount of snow, where you build a loose structure and toss it on top, to having found like relatively dense snow and you just hollow a spot out, just like a snow cave or whatever. I've never had it quite firm enough to make a proper igloo, where you can like cut it with a saw and pick it up. And it's not.
You almost need a styrofoam consistency. We don't really get it in this neck of the woods. A little further north, like Nunavut and stuff like that, I've seen it there. When you step on it, it literally sounds like styrofoam. That's the snow you're looking for. Yeah. I've never made an igloo. Don't get me wrong. I'm not even going to pretend that I did. But I do. I have had somebody show me the type of snow that would be ideal. And honestly, we just don't get it here.
I think I've seen it a couple of times, never enough in a quantity that was more useful enough for me. But the Quincy huts I've definitely seen, where you toss the snow and dig it, hollow it out. I mean, it take a bit of work, yes, but honestly, for the effort, I mean, you're talking here. This is a tool I like to take when I go wintering. It's just a little collapsible shovel. It's a great little bit of fun. This thing weighs ounces.
I was going to say, it sounds like aluminum just from the sound of it.
Yeah, the whole thing's aluminum. It's pretty hollow. It's not that big. Folds up. I've taken a slightly bigger one on certain trips, but honestly, something like that, throw that on your sled, and you don't have to take much else. I got some heavy-duty plastic bags where you might throw underneath your sleeping bag just in case. But other than that, it's an ultralight shelter. I don't care what anyone says. Like, if that makes your shelter, that's your ultralight shelter.
Oh, for sure. I like how you mentioned Quincy huts, because that is a very simplistic shelter for anybody that wants to try doing some winter camping. If you got the snow fort. And if you're not familiar with a Quincy hut, I strongly recommend, do a little Googling and stuff like that, because they're going to give you a much better explanation than what we are. But literally, you just kind of make a pile of snow and you hollow it out. And that gives you your four sides of wind protection. You can make your fire in the middle. You can usually get a couple people in and around it, too. So it's a good place to start if you want to start winter camping. If you don't want to do the hot tent thing, that's where I would recommend you start. Get yourself a decent tent, get yourself a hot tent, test all your gear. Generally stay a tiny bit drier in situations like that, but once again, just think about it really well before you go and you'll be fine.
But a Quincy hut, honestly, a couple of candles will warm that up to a surprisingly, I mean, you're not talking you're going to be in your underwear panting saying, oh, holy cow, it's warm. No, you're not going to have that. But you're going to be more than comfortable in a sweatshirt and, lined pants, sitting down, chatting with your buddy or whatnot. And in a sleeping bag, you're going to be plenty warm. Throw inside a couple of good boughs as a place to sit, and you have that evergreen smell inside, like nice pine or spruce. Uh, and a couple of, like I said, just a couple of candles will warm it up enough to take the chill off. You got no wind. You don't need much, and it is a surprisingly, with the white snow, it reflects. You get plenty of light. I mean, not necessarily like you can read a novel by a candle, but you can definitely see each other and have a great chat and a great communication.
Yep.
And it is a fun and exciting way to spend a night. And there's plenty, probably hundreds of variations on how you can do it.
So Scott says he'd be afraid it would collapse on him. So the beauty of a Quincy versus like an actual snow shelter, snow cave, something like that, it's open top. So the only way it can really collapse in is like this way. So when you dig it with a slight funnel, and I do mean slight, I'm exaggerating here, funnel out. That way your smoke from your candles or your fire or whatever will go out a little bit more. And with the little whip out, it tends to kind of whip the wind up and around it too. Definitely check it out, Scott. Like, just look up Quincy Hut. They're really not complicated, and they're pretty safe. Like, I would recommend one of those well before a full-on snow shelter. You know what I mean? I've tried snow shelters. I've had one collapse on me. Not a fun time.
Yeah, I've done it for years. Rarely have I ever had any kind of risk of that. You do want to. There are a few tricks to it. The stick trick is one of my favorite. I call it the stick trick, but you cut a whole bunch of sticks about a foot long, and you make your hill, and you go around. You stick all these 1 foot long sticks into the shelter, and then you go dig, and you only dig till you hit a stick, and then you stop digging in that direction because you now know you only have about a foot of snow left. So if you leave that foot there, that's plenty strong to hold you up, and you're going to be pretty cozy in there. The other trick, and this was a really fun one, is to basically take a bunch of relatively flexible, like say alders, and you bend them over to make a roof. And then you throw some boughs on that, and then just throw the snow on top of that. And the boughs and the sticks form your shelter, and then you don't have to dig it out. It's already there. You throw that snow on top, and that becomes your insulation and your protection. And it can do pretty well what it wants inside, unless you get like a major rainstorm. You're never going to find out about it inside. I mean, it can storm, it can snow, it can howl. It doesn't really matter. You're going to be fine in there. The more it snows, the more insulated it gets. Just make sure that you have a good way to get out. So keep a shovel in there. Cover your door over, but make sure you're going to be able to get to it and kick it out. If you got a heavy snow, I guess you might have to shovel a bit out. But I've never experienced enough snow that I wasn't able to do that. And then the other thing is always have a couple of holes. They don't have to be very big, probably 2 to 3 inches at least, poked through for ventilation.
Yeah, you definitely want a little air in there. Don't seal yourself in. We laugh, but I mean, that is a common mistake for people going out there just learning. They seal themselves in thinking, oh, it's airtight, this is going to be wicked. They light a candle, they burn up all their oxygen, they go to sleep because they're getting tired, probably from the lack of oxygen, and that's where sometimes they're found, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be huge holes. I suggest 2 to 3 plus your entrance is more than adequate. Yeah.
I go with the size of my wrist.
Yeah. But it is a great thing. So I mean, snow can be a shelter, it can be your protection, it can provide you like a source of water. It can insulate you warm. You can use it to preserve your food too. Like, just take your food and throw snow over the top of it. It's going to stay froze, or it's going to stay more or less in the condition it was. It's not going to get warmer, but it's going to preserve. So you can take meals that you would never even think to take in the summer.
You can take like fresh meat, a lot of fresh meat, because you can leave it frozen. Vacuum seal it, leave it in the snowbank. It's perfectly fine for a couple days.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, the foods that you mightn't have bothered with in the summer, you can now take without worry. Leftovers are fine. Just a sealed container, put them in, lay it in the snow. It's good. All you have to do is rewarm it. And then like dehydrated foods are just so much more enjoyable. Like a nice, like the chili I made the last, I did that as when we did the group camping, I did that dehydrated. And I think Steve was there with me, and he said it was just as good rehydrated as it was the first time. And it's hard to beat like a nice chili or something like that when you're out in the winter, like nice warm hot meal.
A nice hearty hot meal. It's just amazing in cooler weather. Now, we did say, one thing you mentioned there, Ben, was back with Quincy Hut, you won't be stripped down to your underwear panting kind of warm. If for some reason you're the type of person that is looking for that experience, I would suggest you look up something called a super shelter. It's the only shelter I've made in the winter where that is literally how warm you can make it. You can do it individually. I recommend it in groups. It just works a little better functionally. Not that you're going to be panting around your underwear in the groups, but maintaining the fire works better in the group. You can shift sleep.
Depends on the group there, buddy. Like,
I mean, I don't judge. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, there's a niche for that.
Contact me later. I'll tell you the groups. Joking.
We started many of them.
They kicked us out. They didn't like it.
But no, seriously, look up a super shelter. It's basically a lean-to with a piece of thicker clear plastic over the front, and you basically make an oven. Same kind of deal. Make sure you got an air hole. And the last time we made one, we wanted to see how warm we could get it in, and I think I've told this story before. It was like minus 30-something outside with the wind chill, and inside we were like 28 to 35 degrees Celsius. Like, it was hot. Not just cozy, it was hot.
So you have the fire inside of that or out?
Outside. So, real quickly, build a lean-to, like, your slope, trying to get on my camp thing, seal the two sides, and then your plastic tarp just comes down the front of it, and you're inside this area. Your fire would be out here. So the best way it works is if you have a lean-to here and a lean-to here and a fire in the middle, and the wind kind of going through the middle off it, that pulls the smoke away. But the heat reflects in, and then the plastic will trap it inside. If you have Mylar or any of those survival blankets or something like that, and you line the back off your lean-to with it, like that's what we did, and that's how we literally turned it into an oven. Like, it was hot enough you could have just laid down and went to sleep in your shorts and t-shirt and been comfortable. The downside to that is it does give you a false sense of security. You do need somebody maintaining that fire. If you start getting hot and peeling layers off, which we do as we get warm, if you go to sleep and that fire dies down, it gets cold quick. So you do need to make sure you're maintaining that fire. Take that into account. That's why I do recommend it with group camping. Just take rotations. We did it with a group of 2. First person slept 4 hours. The other person maintained the fire for 4 hours, and then we flipped and just went back and forth. We each got 8 hours of sleep, just in 4-hour increments. Things were great. So, worked out well.
Yeah, that is a fun way to do it for sure. And easy to do. And like you said, like if you do it right, you get virtually no wind inside that camp area, just enough of a breeze to sort of keep your smoke clear. It can be a great time. And not all really that hard of a work. It takes you probably 4 to 5 hours to build a decent shelter.
With these super shelters, you can throw them, you potentially can throw them up even quicker than that, depending on how much you cheat and what materials you bring with you. Where you do get that Mylar backing, you don't need quite as many spruce boughs and stuff over the back. So all we did was literally the 2 classic trees, your slanted poles, a couple runners, a handful of spruce boughs, some snow over that and the Mylar on the inside, and then just some spruce boughs going up the... Well, truthfully, we had enough plastic. We used like the plastic you would use to vapor barrier your house. We just took a roll of that with us and cut it to suit. And once you get a piece, and you know the size, you can refold that and pack it up, and all is good. We used the thicker stuff. It was big enough to kind of go around the sides, and I'm thinking 2 hours. Is what we put it up in. Now, we had the materials ready. We knew where we were going. We pre-scouted the area. We had a lot of things working for us. Don't just walk in and assume it's going to be 2 hours. Ben's right. If you're going into an unknown area, you're looking at like 4 hours to do a good job of your shelter.
I'm just thinking cutting your poles and your cross members, and the ends help add to your fire, and you need a fair bit of wood to get you through the winter in one of the, or through the night in one of those for fire. You want a decent little fire pit.
You want we went with a long fire. I don't know if there's a preference. For us, the long fire was great. Basically, we built it to be as long as the front of our shelters.
Oh, 6 feet, 7 feet?
Yeah, we're shorter, so 6 feet.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less in, but I mean, it was, funny enough, there wasn't a whole lot of snow. And yeah, we were maybe 3-4 feet away from the fire on both sides.
Yeah.
Once again, we pre-scouted the area. We cheated like hell, I'm not even going to lie. But we wanted to try it to see what the capabilities of this really were. And that's what we got to. And I see Scott over here in the comments. He said he did a super shelter. The temp inside was 50, with the temp outside being 25. I'm going to assume that's Fahrenheit, which is still nice and comfy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For camping in the winter, that is great.
Yeah. A great method, a lot of fun for sure. And you can set them up pretty enjoyable. Like, you build a slightly raised bed system in some of them. Some people definitely do. Other people just throw the boughs down to sit on.
That's all we did.
Yeah. The more comfortable you want to make it, the more time is it's going to take. There's no doubt about that. And there's definitely ways to cheat. If you want to get one of the pre-made camp cots that you can take in and sit down, it's going to save you a lot of time and trouble. A nice insulated air mattress is going to make it even more comfortable. But that's stuff you have to bring in. But the beauty is you're not bringing a ton of other stuff. You don't need the tent. You don't necessarily need a tarp per se, although you do have your plastic, which you can use in that function. But a great time in utilizing, again, the snow as a sort of an insulating value there on the back side of it.
You want to know what works really well for a mat if you're on a budget? Kinda. Once upon a time, maybe on a budget. I don't know what the cost of it would be now. Do you know what I mean when I say silver wall?
No.
So what silver wall is when you're building a building, it's basically styrofoam with mylar on either side of it. They usually put it on the outside of buildings before the Tyvek.
Okay. I've covered my house in what's called P2000, and that was a similar idea.
Could be the same thing. We always called it silver wall. Honestly, it's literally just half-inch styrofoam with mylar on either side.
Yeah.
If you get yourself a piece of that and throw it on the ground, that holds or will keep a ton of cold out. I mean, you can lay directly on that, and you won't feel the cold through it, unless it's really, really bad.
Well, when I bought the P2000 for the house, I contacted the guy from New Brunswick. He sold it. Like, that was the brand name anyways.
Level wall. Thank you, Steve. Sorry, I think that's actually its name, and I called it silver wall because of the silver outside.
But this stuff, Buddy said it's the same foam that you use in a styrofoam cup. So an 1/8 inch can allow you to hold 100 degrees Celsius water without burning your hands. And then you put that mylar on both sides, and it's kind of reflective. Yeah, it would work great. Reflectix is the bubble wrap with mylar on both sides, and that works amazing.
Same thing.
There's definitely a ton of options out there. The cheapest, quickest way to get that, I think, is windshield reflectors.
Yep.
And I have, within feet of me, probably a half dozen of them I picked up for $2-3 at Canadian Tire in the winter when they sell them dirt cheap.
That being said, what do you guys use for a winter sleeping mat? What's your R value? Use anything with it? Why don't you go first, Ben? Because yours will probably be a lot more legitimate than my answer.
I have, right now, what I've been using for the last year or so is the Highburn 8. So it's a small, I think I can grab one. Give me 2 seconds.
Yep. So while Ben's grabbing that, much the same, I've upgraded to the Hibernate 8. Before that, I literally used the level wall. Once you lay on it so much, it actually gets moldable and you can roll it up. It's pretty good that way, but I would also use it in conjunction with one of those self-inflating mats. Added a lot of bulk, but...
I mean, so this here, pack size, it says it's 10 inches by 4.5 inches. I have no reason to disagree with them. And it says the weight is 24 ounces. and it's considered a season sleeping pad, and I believe it has an R value of like 3.4. And I've taken it out. I know guys with the Expedition X-Pad or whatever. I slept in the same conditions as them. I've never had a complaint. It's lightweight. It's squishy. I mean, it says 10.5 by 4, but honestly, this thing squats down to even smaller than that. Like that's, you know, you can. I've squished this in the bag with my sleeping bag and then compressed it.
R value of 4.5.
4.5. I mean, and it works good. I found this works great. Are there better products out there? I'm sure there are. And there's other products that probably aren't quite good, but this works great. Take this, throw a wool blanket above or below it, and I mean, I think you got a bomb-proof system. Even any of the self-inflating mattresses with something like a piece of, yeah, it works good. I find them surprisingly comfortable, and I am, anyone who knows me, very picky on what I sleep on.
The only thing I wished this mat did that it didn't do, I wish it came with a little bit of an inflator. You can inflate it super quick with your mouth, don't get me wrong, but you're putting moist air inside a container, you know what I mean? So to me, I think it would probably even get a little better R value, or maybe their true R value, whichever you want to say, was probably done with dry air going in. Now, how much is that really going to affect things? Debatable, honestly. Maybe even neglect. Maybe not even worth talking about. Can't think of the word I'm trying to. Thanks, my dyslexia's kicking in. But anyway, just to me, that I would have liked to have seen that.
I actually contacted the company about that, and I left a message with them. They said they were going to get back to me. That's been almost 2 years now. I'm still waiting. I'm sure that I'm the next person. I'm sure that they're going to contact. But I asked, why is there not like some kind of inflating system, a little pump, a bag, anything? I really don't care.
It really easily could have been incorporated into the bag it comes in. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really wish they had done something with that. They didn't. I still haven't heard anything about it. If they did, I would definitely buy it. I mean, they do not sponsor us in the least. It was simply for me a dollars and cents thing. I was able to pick these up for significantly less, like less than half than a lot of their competitors in price. I mean, I don't know, have they gone up? Or what was the price on that when you just
$79.95, and I think I bought mine. Let's see, view last order. I bought mine for $79.95, so it's stayed the same price since July, at least. July of last year, by the way. I bought it July 30th, 2020.
So they've stayed a decent price. A lot of the similar competition, you're looking at well over $100, sometimes closer to 180 to 200. So that's why I went with that one. And I do recommend it. Can you do it for less? 100%. A Mylar blanket over and above just a regular inflating one, but you're still paying $35 to $50 for a non-insulated one. And it would do a similar job. That Reflectix, and then cushioning it. You can actually go to the dollar store and buy Reflectix or the Mylar sleeping bags, and just throw your air mattress right in that, and I'm pretty sure you would get probably a similar R value, and it wouldn't add a ton of weight. Wool blanket would do a very good job too.
And that's what Steve was saying over here on the, well, my right, I guess. But anyway, in our comments, he uses, where was it? I was going to come back to it. Steve, I used my 3-season pad, nothing fancy, and added a wool blanket. Wool blankets, we've said it in the past, they're kind of a gold standard when it comes to sleeping in the cold, simply because they retain so much of their R value even when they're wet. That's why we recommend the wool. I mean, it's time, tried, tested, and true. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't like the feel of wool. Bet you're going to like frostbite a lot less. Like, coming from a guy that's had frostbite twice, I can guarantee you it was easier to sleep in the wool blanket than it was the 2, maybe 3 weeks afterwards of my ears in absolute agony from freezing.
Yeah. I have wool here. I also have down here. Both very good options. Both have their ups and downs, no doubt about it. Um, and some combination thereof is almost unbeatable for me. Um, yeah. So, yeah, those are the things sort of, to think about, to know. I think we're off a little bit on the topic, but, winter camping, I mean, it's coming. I'm looking forward to it. I realize I probably won't get out much early December, but January, I am hoping to hit it heavy and hard and often.
And you and I still have another camp trip to make once we can align the stars enough for us to get out. I'm thinking January as well. Yeah. Not far from where we did the group camping. So, Steve, just because you were nice enough to come out to the group camping with us, I'll extend this out to you as well. When Ben and I go to hit this camp up, and I'm not going to say the location or who uses it or any of that good stuff, because I'm like that, and for other reasons. But you're more than welcome to come too. Place sleeps 4. I think 3 of us would be in there just great. But yeah, I covered everything I wanted to on the snow topic as well, Ben. So
yeah, but no, just the only real thing I want to throw, the passing thing, is do not let the snow keep you from enjoying the outdoors, because honestly, it really can enhance the situation. Embrace it. Think of its advantages. I mean, the aesthetics, the beauty, the ease that it can give you using the right tools, sleds, skis, snowshoes, things like that. Get out there, embrace it, enjoy it. I think what you'll find is that it's a hell of a lot better than you expect it, and definitely not something to be afraid of.
Nope. Get out there, have fun, be safe. As we said several times, because we are advocates for safety, a little bit of replanning is going to go a long way in this. Just think it out. Make sure you stay safe. Make sure you stay warm.
As we always say, test your gear. Have a backup plan. Have a way out. And a backup plan very well could be a 2-minute walk back to your vehicle and drive home.
Yep.
I mean,
it's never worth freezing to death to prove a point. You want to have fun.
Anyways, that's an hour, which is probably a record for us in shortness. Night all.
Night, everybody. We'll see you next week.